Hello everybody, my name is Eric Mullins, and today we're going to be checking out Kotobukiya's Bishoujo's classic original Rogue figure. She's a 1/8 like most of the Bishoujo figures that first came out on this line, and she is absolutely gorgeous. But her current market price is incredibly high, so I will try and show you the positives and the negatives to this figure, see if she's worth your hard-earned cash, and if she'll even fit in one of your shelves or not. Starting off with this base, this is like Vogue magazine? Vogue Rogue? Vogue Rogue. This is a weird one. I don't understand it. I don't even know what the creators were thinking back in the day when they were sculpting it. It's so awkward, and even in the illustration it was on there. I don't know what to say. It's made out of white plastic. The problem being is that it can get sun damage really easily, and I take such good care of my figures. But I have an adorable cat that I love more than anything in the world, and unfortunately, she kind of opened up one of my blinds by mistake, and so for a full week straight, I hadn't noticed, but sun was just pouring on this figure. Oh my goodness, it's sad. So be mindful of this when you're picking one up. You want to see some really good pictures that are nice and clean so that you can make sure you're not getting something that's kind of yellowed out like mine is. The back of her stand is as white as pure snow, and anyway, whatever. It's a weird stand. I think that one thing people could do is easily chop her off the stand and put on a really cool sentinel head. She has the perfect pose for it, so kit bashing this would be pretty awesome. But the price point you're going to be spending to get her in today's day and age, I would say it's not really worth it, but to each their own. The base itself is hollowed out and she comes stuck to it, so there's not really any assembly required with her. She has this weird little white added piece for her boot because clearly the sculpt of the figure itself didn't mash well with the weird angles of this base. Where we then get into her nice thigh-high boots. These boots are beautiful. I love them. They look so good. We get a little bit of a beveled line at the bottom here to indicate the different in plastics for these boots, where we then get into the boot itself. I love the ruffled fabric here from all the stretches and the bends and the folds that we get. They're very well done. It's not over excessive. It's a pretty good amount and it looks fairly realistic. The choice of yellow here is just so vibrant and beautiful, and it's all in gloss. This is great, and this creates an excellent division between the yellow and the green of her costume. It looks like she's wearing the boots, and I always love when they do this, where we have these little black bands that seem to be attaching the boot onto her leg in the first place. They look good. It's very comic booky. We don't get any belts or attachments around them, but I've got no problem with this. This looks like something you'd see as an illustration for a cartoon or so such. The green of her costume is soft, smooth, and very well sculpted. She has an excellent shape, really looks like Shunia's artwork, really looks like anime and manga. It's beautiful. We get a couple areas here and there. We can see the folds of the costume, and it's nice because it's not over excessive. It's the right amount in the right spots to indicate that parts of her body are moving around while wearing this form-fitting, painted-on costume. It really does feel like something you'd see at an old school 90s costume. You know how like Superman would just have it painted on so much that you see all his abs? And even Rogue, where it's literally painted on her body. This figure really does an excellent job at capturing that. We get beveled in line work all around the green, which is something they didn't actually have to do, but they put it into this figure, which is really great. I say they didn't have to do it, but it's just because this is an older figure and at her price point, for real, they could have cheaped out on a lot more things here. They put a lot of love into this. Once we get into the center of her costume is where we go into those yellows. It's a matte yellow. I think I personally would have preferred it to be like a gloss so it would match up with her boots and it would section away from the greens. But I'm not going to hate on this. The yellow they use is a really nice yellow, and it feels kind of like the colors they would use in a comic. She's sporting that epic X-Men logo that's a decal on her chest, and her chest is perfectly molded to look like it's almost like a second layer of skin for her. Where we then go up into the neck piece, and you can see her neck coming out here. It doesn't really go into it nicely, but it's not horrible. It's just not the best I've seen. Speaking of how form-fitting this yellow is, we actually get a really beautiful collarbone, a pronounced neckline here. It's very cool. I like that they put the line down the center of her body and her stomach, going down into her belly button, but it's not overly pronounced. It's just enough so that you know it's there. When we go a bit under her belt, this is where you get to see a bit more line work and stretch marks from the fabric, and it's really great. Her behind is incredibly well sculpted and pronounced. It looks good. It looks like in the cartoon, the comics, or something you'd see out of an anime. Mine has a bit of runoff from the paint, which is kind of a shame. It doesn't go into the green, but it does create a kind of texture over the top of the yellow, and that's a bit of a disappointment. where this yellow piece then goes up into her back, and we have a nice defined line to indicate her spine. It looks gorgeous. Her whole bodysuit is beautiful. It just has a couple of seam lines here or there, which can be a little bit off-putting, especially if you overpay for a figure like this. She has a double belt thing going on, and I love every single second of it. It looks so good. I love this belt. It's got those sash kind of vibes, the way that it comes down on her body, while one of them seems to be attached more like it would be realistically. It's beautifully sculpted with an awesome little X-Men logo in there and some cute little paint apps that are silver that have very few blemishes on them. It's very well done. Seeing the buckle and the little attachments for that buckle, this is the sort of thing that we don't even get in a lot of Koto figures in today's day and age for something so small. You would have just made a little attachment and been like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Kind of like the domino figure. All this just to say that the belt on this classic one is really nice. I would say it's much nicer than the Rebirth one, but the Rebirth one is still pretty cool. Her jacket is a brownish, greenish brown, which makes sense. It's supposed to be like a greenish brown in the comics and in the TV show, so I don't mind that so much. It's glossy, which... okay, I suppose. I would have made it matte just because it's leather, so having such a high gloss on it's a little weird, but it does make it pop on the figure, and I guess that's what's important here. On the inside of the jacket around her body, you can see it's the same color as the outside, however, her rolled up sleeves come off as being that more of a green, so I think I would have liked to see that green on the inside of her actual jacket down near the body. Little piece of coherence I would have really appreciated, but again, at the price point, it's not really a big deal not having it. She has two X-Men decals on each one of her shoulders, and the fact that the arms are clearly molded separately from the body, however, the way they attach them here creates the line of the jacket, is just, you know, clever thinking. It's crazy to think that there are some statues in today's day and age that forget to do this. On her inside collar, she has her cute little, I don't know what this is, it just looks soft and comfortable for her neck. It looks nice, it really pops because she doesn't have anything that kind of coincides with that color anywhere else, and I guess the only thing that you would think of that matches up is her hair a little bit with the white strands. Her forearms look fantastic, though the left one does have a mold line going across the center of it. It's not something that's that noticeable while she's put on a shelf. And then we have her gloves. These gloves. I do think they look really nice. I think the concept is cool, having the cut off fingers with the black at the tips, where we have a bit of a gloss on that black. It's kind of a callback to the black bands that are on her boots. It is nice. I like it. But the glove yellow part itself should have been glossed out like her boots. It's kind of disappointing that it's a bit more of a pastel yellow. I don't know. It makes it so that her boots stick out like a sore thumb in comparison to the rest of her costume. But they are well sculpted, and I do think they look cool. Her neck is sectioned off into two pieces, where the beige skin part then goes into her face, which is actually sectioned off as another piece. I never really like when figures do things like this. It's just too much sections, too much cuts, too much lines that I don't usually like to see. But in this case, it's really well rounded off, and when you do see it, it almost feels like you're looking at an illustration, because artists will usually illustrate that jawline. So you kind of get that vibe by looking at this figure. She actually has both her ears. You can see the right one pretty clearly, and it's decently sculpted, whereas you don't see her left one, but it is there. Her face itself is very rounded, very soft, and super cute. The sculptor really did a fantastic job at making it represent the source material artwork by Shunya, and I love that so much. The lips are actually really well defined. Where it goes into her mouth, you can see a bit of her teeth, and it's just so well done. It doesn't seem cheap, and there's no major paint overlap or issues, despite it being so tiny. The eye decals are gorgeous. They look like the artwork, so there's nothing I have to say much there, where the eyebrows are kind of on the same page. Her hair is done with kind of a warmer, lighter brown, and then afterwards they put shading all over it. So there's no highlights or no little light reflection anywhere here. The sculpt is very flowy and beautiful, but we do get a mold line axing across the back of the hair. It's kind of sad, but I don't see the back of her hair that often, considering I always pose her from a front view, so it's not the end of the world. White strands at the front of her hair do an excellent job at forcing your eye to look at her face. It's a great focal point. It looks beautiful. I would have maybe liked it to be a little whiter and have a little less gray shading on it, but I'm not going to hate on it too much. From a distance, you don't really pay attention to that anyway. It looks good. This OG Rogue has actually had 2 releases throughout her career, which makes sense because she is absolutely fantastic, and at a price point like 6,200 yen, Oh man, oh my goodness, like even at the time that she was released back in 2009, this was a really great price for the quality that you get here. She's just phenomenal. I love this Rogue. I find she encompasses everything that the comics are and everything that you want out of an anime or a manga figure. It's just all there. It's got the right amount of spice, it looks cute, just this fun pose that really is dynamic. It's just the base that's a little bit of a disappointment, but I mean, this figure came out a long time ago, and I feel like Koto really wasn't even thinking about bases back then. At least not for their Marvel line. They put so much work and love into this, and I can only imagine it's because they wanted to have the license to make future figures, which they clearly managed to secure with her because, you know, all these years later, we've got the Rebirth figure. Despite my minor grievances with a couple of mold lines here and there are very few paint blemishes, and the mold lines on this 1/8 figure are significantly less visible than the ones you're gonna see on this Mystique over here. Yet she's a smaller figure. They put so much love and hard work into making her, and it really shows. Rogue is actually my favorite Marvel character of all time. I'm just a really big fan. I grew up watching the old X-Men 90s cartoon show, and I read a ton of the comic books. And the fact that she had so much character development, her fear of getting close to other people, and her emotional conflict that she would constantly go through was a huge driving force for me becoming somebody that loves to write those kind of characters today. When compared with the newer version, I don't know what to say. I think the newer version is really beautiful, very well done, but at the same time, this one here is more representative of what I would want out of a mashup between the West and the East in designs. I also love how the focal point of the original Rogue is Rogue, whereas this one, front row and center, it's Wolverine. F***ing Wolverine. He's everywhere, and I like Wolvie. I'm just like really tired of him. I know that trying to find a figure like this at a decent price isn't easy, and if you really want her for your collection, maybe you have all the classic original Kotobukiya figures, and you just need this one. She's incredibly pricey, but I would say she's worth it if you have the funds for it. Just be sure you're capable of asking to see a lot of photos of the figure, and first and foremost, that it wasn't put in any kind of sunlit place. Most figure collectors know this. I like to mention because sometimes it just gets overlooked. She's also a 1/8, so if you're collecting all the newer stuff or you're just a big Rogue fan in general, maybe she won't fit with what you have going on at home. Hopefully this review today helped you decide if you're still on the fence of getting her or not. If you like my video just a little bit, it doesn't cost much to force blast that like, absorb that subscribe, magnetically crush that notification bell. It goes a crazy long way at helping support my channel, and I love and appreciate you for helping support my channel. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye! The year was 2000-some-odd-9, and I was on my way to a comic book shop. Let me tell you, back then, we used to have to walk to our comic book shops. We couldn't take no fancy, well, we had the bus, actually. And back then, buses used to cost less than $1. And let me tell you, they were a lot cleaner. Well, they weren't much cleaner than they are today, actually. They're pretty dirty back then, too. In any case, I digress. I go to my local comic book shop. I wanted to get myself a classic comic book, of course, with perhaps Rogue and her beau, Remy LeBeau. But upon walking into that comic book shop, gasp, I freaked my ass out and I saw this figure. She was just standing there, upon all the other figures. They also had Black Widow, so I got them all. And I was most certainly poor at that time and day and age. As I lived in an apartment, I split with 2 other people I didn't know so well, along with having to pay to go to school. Let me tell you, the month I got her, I ate a lot of pasta. Where was I? Oh yes, the important point is that I saw her and she just glowed upon the rest. And in today's day and age, where I don't own any of my other Koto old-school classic figures, I sold them to help pay for my comic book. Comics aren't cheap, and printing them is excessively expensive. What was I talking about again? Ah, yes, Rogue. The important thing is that I ended up getting her and living off of pasta for quite the month there. But she's an absolutely incredible figure, and she's so worth it for me. And she's the one figure that I'll never sell because she represents so much of what I love about anime, manga, and the West, all wrapped up into one beautiful package. I just think she's fantastic. And if you like this kind of character, you should probably get her too. But is she worth eating pasta for a month or 2 straight? Well, let me tell you, I did it, and I'm still alive today to tell the story. So maybe you could. But I don't want to tell you what to do with your funds.
We all have crazy things to do in our lives, and at one point, am I just going on and on? When am I going to end this? I'm always trying to make these jokes, and at one point, when do they end? When does the joke end?